is how you open up an image. Once you've downloaded it, it'll come and download. You'll have to right-click it, the folder. It'll be in a .zip file, and then you'll have to press Extract All. So, for example, this is a scoring engine. It's a zipped folder. Right-click, Extract All. It'll have a destination folder. Just click Extract. It does it. And this is the important part. Sometimes it automatically opens, sometimes it doesn't. You have to open the folder, this folder, the extracted one, not the one that's still zipped. Otherwise, it doesn't work. And then, to start a virtual machine, you'll be in that folder and you'll see an icon with 3 blue squares. So you would double click this icon. So once you have VMware up and the image started, we'll start with lesson 1. You should edit your virtual machine settings. Right now they're on low because my computer is not that amazing. You should set it at whatever the recommended memory is. I set it at 1 GB. And for processors, set it for half. If you're running one image, I only have 4, so I'm setting it for 2 processors to run it. The more you set it as, the faster it will run, although you shouldn't set it more than your host machine has, because your host machine should be prioritized. So once you start it, you can double click it or press play. You click this button to enter full screen. Charlie, you can hear the cricket? Why are you watching Charlie? This virtual machine should automatically log you in. Right now we're using the user hacker. That is not we're not promoting being a hacker or using any hacking tools or being malicious with any of the things that we teach you. It's just a username. So you don't have this answers text file. This is for me to reference. Once we see the README, which is the directions for what to do with the image. Right now it says, this is a desktop computer meant for data processing and checking email, so just a normal computer. You're logged in as the user hacker, as we know. And then it lists the authenticated users and authenticated administrators. So anyone else we would like to delete. Now, we could, the normal way you're used to doing this is to go into Control Panel. All right, is to go into Control Panel and then click Add or Remove User Accounts. And then do things from here. But this is a slow way and it doesn't show you everything. So we're not going to do that. The better way to do it is to press the Start button, type in MMC, click on this. It stands for Microsoft Management Console. It's very useful. Then once it's open, you click File, Add Remove Snap-in. Scroll down to Local Users and Groups. Add it, click Yes. And then we're also today going to do Services, so add that, then click Finish. So now you have these two. Again, that was File, Add, Remove, Snap-in. You double-click Users and Groups. You double-click Users. We see that we have quite a few users here. Now, on most images, for most of the rounds, you won't have this many, but on Cyber Patriot, for example, semifinals, and finals, they'll just give you like 50 users just to waste your time and test your speed at how fast you can do this. So what we're going to do is we look at the README and we check who are the authenticated users. And then we see who's on here, and we see if there's anyone on here that is not an authenticated user or administrator, then we should remove them. For example, administrator, that is not on the README as someone who should be there, but it's a built-in account. So the way we secure this is we rename it as Charlie Franks because he's watching. That was right-click, rename, and then we set a password. This is the easy way to set a password. Mermaid 69 exclamation mark. Control cut. And now we can paste it in for each one. And if we go to properties, he's disabled. The password should expire, but his account is disabled, which is good because we don't want anyone trying to log into this because we're not using it. You shouldn't disable it or secure it that much if you're the one who's logged in as this administrator account. But in this case, we're logged in as hacker and not the default administrator account. So we want to do that sort of thing to everybody. We notice Anakin Skywalker is good, but we still have to set a password. We check his properties. Everything's good. And you want to do that for all the users. So I know for a fact that the scored ones are that Boba Fett has a password. So we're going to do that right now. I'm going to set his password. We should get a point for that. A user that is not on the README, for example, is Darth Sidious. He's not there anywhere. So, right here. So we should still set a password, just in case. But we can either delete him or we can disable him. They both do the same thing. If you're a beginner, I would suggest disabling them because if you disable them, you can bring them back. Cyber Patriot scoring engine does not differentiate from being deleted and disabled. So disabling is better because in case you accidentally disable the wrong user, you can just uncheck it, and then you can get them back. Because otherwise, you'll be deducted points. You'll have a penalty if you delete a good user. Oh yeah. So the guest count, the other built-in account, is the guest. We should also set a password to it and then rename it, because otherwise someone automatically knows the account name of an account on the system just by knowing which ones are the built-in accounts. So we have to rename it. But we also want to disable it because we're not going to use it at all, and we don't want anyone else to try to log in as it. So that should also get us a point. Oh yeah, another thing, NT user. So this was something that showed up in the finals. NT user and then a bunch of numbers is usually, it is an account that is built into the system and it's used for the system to get in and do things. But in this case, this one's a fake one, and so is the one at finals last year. So we should set a password to it and then disable it. Okay, Jin is a good person. He is disabled right now, so we must free him, free his account. First, set a new password for him. And that's all you need to do for users. You should do that for every one of these users. I only did it to the ones that I know I scored, but you should do it to all of them. Set a password and then decide whether they should be disabled or not. So then we go into groups. You click groups over here. The administrators is probably the most important. You look at it and then you look at the README. You read the authenticated administrators, Mace, Count Dooku, and us. This is us. This is Mace. This is Count Dooku. And this is the default administrator, which we changed to Charlie Franks. Disney should not be an administrator, so we remove him. Another important group, the second most important, is remote desktop users. No one should be in here. You can press Shift and click on another user, and that will select all the users from that one to the other one in between. And that way you can get rid of a bunch at one time. It's just a way to save time. Okay, so now that we've done users and groups, it's time to do services. There's a list that Charlie originally made on the giant Windows 7 checklist that you have in Cyber Materials, and then it's under checklists, and then Windows, and then client, which I gave out by the drive. But there's a list of exactly what every service should be configured as. But in this case, there's only 4 that were scored last year that we got points for. So the first one, and the one that everybody remembers, is Telnet. Telnet, if you guys ever know what CMD is, command prompts, it allows you to do anything on the system except through typing in commands instead of just clicking on buttons. So this is a command prompt for the system that I'm on, but if someone uses Telnet, they can get this exact thing, a command prompt for this system on another computer if they use Telnet. So obviously that's a vulnerability, so we have to stop it. We right-click on the service, we click Properties, we stop it first if it's running, and then Startup Type, we change to Disabled. So that's one. Something that supports Telnet is telephony. So we do the same thing. Properties, stop. Then we change the startup type to disabled. Another one that was scored last year is the SNMP service. It's not good. It's Simple Network Management Protocol. We don't want it to be simple. Usually when things say simple, it's probably bad. Do the same thing. We stop it. We make it disabled. So everybody always remembers Telnet, but they never remember telephony, SNMP, or RIP listener. And all of these were points last year. They might not all be on the same image. It might be one thing. It might only be Telnet, or it might only be RIP listener. But one of them, at least one of them, is probably going to be a point on every image. So there's one last thing before we go. This is, when it says save console settings, it just means that save this configuration of local users and groups and services. We don't need to do that. So the last thing that we need to do in this lesson is turn off remote connections. So we just type remote, allow remote access to this computer. We don't want to do that. So we click don't allow. This is for remote desktop. A lot of times when I'm on the red team, this is the first thing I do, is I try to remote desktop with default credentials into a lot of people's computers. So you want to turn this off as one of the first things you do in finals or in any competition where you have a red team. Remote assistance is different. You don't necessarily have to done check it. You can if you want to. But that's just when you call up, Dell or whoever makes your computer, and then you ask them to help you, and they come in and they draw on your screen and things like that. That's remote assistance. It's much more safe than remote desktop. So I believe that's all 12 vulnerabilities. It says 10 out of 12. this scoring engine is a new one, so it might not have registered everything. It also only updates every 30 seconds, so it might not have registered the last couple things we did. It's got it doesn't have NT user. Yeah, so don't worry if you only have 11 out of 12 because the NT user